How to prevent psychic attack. So, again, this is really going to depend on where the psychic attack is coming from. But in general, being really careful with your energy. So, having really clear boundaries is super important because moments of weak boundaries can create openings for psychic attack. Having good spiritual hygiene, being careful with your energy field, also being careful who you associate with, being careful who you have sex with, being careful who you're friends with, being careful what kind of environments you go into, being careful like the kind of workplaces you go to. Um, if you're going to graveyards all the time, like having good spiritual hygiene in there, having it's basically like having psychic street smarts in terms of prevention. What kind of spirits are you associating with? Are you assuming just because a spirit is a spirit that they are a good spirit? Are you assuming that all of the guides that you have are good spirits? So you could prevent potential psychic attack by being really diligent about these things. A lot of people, when they first start talking to their guides, are just like, wow, who are my guides? And then are just like, my guides show up for me. Like, who are you? I'd like to meet you. I'd like to get to know you. And then whoever shows up, they're just like, oh, wow, cool. These are my guides. And now I call on them and all these things. And sometimes they're also calling on ancestors, like grandparents, great grandparents, their parents, maybe siblings or friends who have passed on, and just kind of having like blind faith in these spirits. So if it's someone you knew who has died, I understand that you think that they might be this amazing guide for you. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily true. So if this person was absolutely amazing in this life, okay, yes, have faith in them. They're probably not going to be your best guide if you actually knew them in this life and they pass over as an ancestor. And it's just not usually how it works. It doesn't mean you can't call on them. If they were amazing in this life, great. That's a really good start. Trust that person. If they were not amazing in this life, or you don't know them very well, like sometimes we have grandparents we didn't know very well, or maybe we never met. If our parent or any of these people kind of had a dark side to them, or a friend, if they were just like not very mature, or maybe they passed away early because they had a drug overdose or these other things. So, the thing that kind of people don't understand is that when someone dies, they do not just like magically become their higher self. They don't just like magically become like an angel or an angelic spirit. A lot of people are going to be roughly the same in death as they are in life. So if your grandparent was like a grouchy old racist lady, her spirit is probably still going to be a grouchy old racist lady. It like doesn't magically mean that these people have like evolved and become these like really spiritual versions of themselves and been reunited with like their highest soul self. Like it just doesn't mean that, and, like, a medium can tell you that because people will go get, like, readings, from mediums with their grandparents, and, like, there's this, like, racist old lady talking to them. Also, people tend to assume that, like, all of the people they know that have crossed over. That's not true. There's a good chance that they could be a ghost, and you really don't wanna be calling on ghosts for help. So, not blindly assuming that everyone we know is now this, like, magical good spirit. That's really great prevention to know that. If they were this amazing, amazing, amazing human, perfect. That's great. That's fine. They're probably not going to be your best guide, but you can trust them. If you could like trust them with your entire life and every soul, every like cell inside them was an amazing person in life, you can trust them in death. Yes. Assuming that they have crossed over. If they haven't crossed over and they're a ghost, you can probably still trust them, but I wouldn't call on them because you don't want to be calling on ghosts ever. Okay. Um, the same theory, but larger, also applies to spirit guides at large. So newbies will often call on their guides and they're just like, wow, who are my guides? Oh my God. And a lot of people have zero problems with this. And a lot of people have problems with this. Because when you say that, it's kind of like you're putting this beacon out, and sometimes random spirits show up, or sometimes random spirits were kind of already there. And so they're like, well, technically I count as a guide, but just because they go by the term guide or spirit guide doesn't actually mean they're like this highly benevolent, really good spirit guide that people mean when they say that. So, having psychic street smarts, you wouldn't just trust a random stranger off the street with your baby. You wouldn't just say, oh my God, random person, I picked you off the street. Can you like watch my dog for like 3 weeks while I go to India? You wouldn't do that. So, you don't do that with random spirits, even if they're showing up when you're asking for your guides, they're still a stranger. So you need to be establishing relationships with these guides just like you would with people. You need to know who they are. You need to be using and discretion and discernment, which are really difficult to do when you've had a lot of trauma. Like some people have a really hard time with this, and it's totally understandable that they have a hard time with this. Some people had like a really healthy childhood. They have really great families. Like they haven't experienced any trauma. They have really healthy nervous systems. They're going to have a really easy time telling when something feels wrong. So when something feels wrong, they're going to go, that doesn't feel good. And they're probably going to be like, I don't think I want to work with you. You need to go away. That's great. Not everyone has such an easy time figuring out what feels wrong because of their past, right? For it could be past lives, it could be ancestral, it could be family situations, it could be other traumas, it could be just a dysregulated nervous system, honestly, from like drinking too much coffee or like being too stressed all the time. Like there's a myriad of reasons why these kind of wires can get crossed, and it can be really difficult to tell that the spirit that doesn't have good intentions doesn't have good intentions, because they're also really good at faking it. Um, so being smart, right? That's the best way to prevent it. This is a complicated topic, which is why it's hard for me to give you like bullet point advice, because it's really vast and it's easier to give specific advice like one-on-one or in small groups. Um, Being careful where you go, being careful with your boundaries, being careful who you associate with, humans or spirits, being really careful when working with spirits. So these are probably the easiest ways to prevent psychic attack when you're going out and about, being really careful with your energy, making sure that you have like a barrier to kind of keep it closed because you don't want anything to hop into it. And one little test you can do with spirits is a spirit that does not have your best intentions, they can lie, but there's certain things they cannot lie about. So you can ask them questions like, and I'm going to use the term God because it's really clear in this. If you don't like the term, that's okay. For these type of questions, it's really clear. So I would recommend it, but you can substitute another word if you would like that. Don't use spirit, because spirit has a lot of different definitions, right? So you could say, like, do you serve the one true God? Are you made of divine love light and only divine love light? Do you have the purest, best intentions of me, or for me? And then you could say, like, do you swear in God's name that you have pure intentions to me? Do you swear in God's name that you are made of divine love light and only divine love light? Okay, so try asking questions like this if you're unsure. They cannot say yes when the answer is no. So you might see these like funny instances where they'll try to like smirk the question because they don't often want you to know that they're not made of divine love light. It's like they're trying to keep up this long-term ruse, and they don't want to be caught. And so they'll get frustrated and they'll kind of like try to smirk around it. If you do not get an abundant, yes, absolutely yes answer, you tell them to hit the fucking streets and never come back. Okay. You tell them to leave. You swear at them and you tell them to get out and you never want to see them again. Okay. That's super clear. If you're having trouble with any of this and you need some support, you can always book a session with me. The link is below.